Good morning and welcome to another inspiring episode of the Good Morning Minute, where we start our day with purpose, passion, and a little bit of power. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and today's conversation is part of our special series in partnership with the Empower Her Step virtual conference, a movement rooted in helping women rise, heal, and walk boldly into the life God has designed for them. Our mission is simple but powerful, empowering life purpose. Because we believe that when a woman finds clarity in her calling, everything changes for her family, her community, and for the generations to come. So, friends, grab your cup of coffee, take a deep breath, and get ready to be uplifted as we dive into real stories, honest lessons, and bold steps towards purpose with our incredible guest, and that is Michael. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Michael, I got to know a little bit about you through your bio. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, yeah. So my name is Michael Bugary. I'm a motivational speaker and an author of the upcoming book. It's called The Disease of Me. I was a former professional athlete. I played baseball at the University of California, Berkeley, and with the Boston Red Sox. And when I got injured in my second season, I fell into opiate addiction. And then as my addiction progressed, I was diagnosed with a large brain tumor. And I had all those things, those bad things kind of happen to me at once. But through a lot of different avenues and turning points in my life, I found a way to turn all that pain and suffering into purpose and meaning. And that's what I do now as I talk, as I speak, share my story.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to get into your story, and
Yeah.
I know you're ready to share. But before so, let me ask you just a fun question. Um, what is one thing that makes you smile?
Well, there's a lot that makes me. My dogs. I think I have three dogs. One of which is a therapy dog, but I have inherited a nice big property in Northeast Ohio, and being out with my dogs on the property, they just watching them jump in the lake and things. That's really what makes me smile. And I will say helping others too. That's something that maybe makes me smile more on the inside.
I like that. I'm a helper too, so I like to see those small wins and just the discovery of victory for, when someone figures it out for themselves. So definitely can understand. And I am a fur baby lover. I have two cats, and so I can understand
Yeah.
how easily they can make you smile, but they can also frustrate you too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love cats too. The only issue is one of my dogs doesn't like cats, so I can't have them, or else I would be
Yeah.
covered in cats too if I could.
Wonderful. Well, hey, let's just dive into our conversation. And so I'm going to ask you, Michael, what was the defining moment of pain or challenge in your life, and how did it impact you?
So I'd say I've had many,
Mhm.
with opiate addiction and with going through withdrawals through that. But I think the one defining time was right after my intense chemotherapy and radiation, after a couple of brain surgeries, a couple of weeks after I really fell into depression and I turned back to opiates again. And I remember being on my couch just in agonizing pain from all the treatment and also being in opiate withdrawal. And I just remember thinking that was like rock bottom. And I think that moment, it just really, I learned what the depths that's why it's called the disease of me, my actions and my choices and the things that I've gone through, what the depths that they can take me to places that I thought I would never go.
Mhm. Wow. And I know you mentioned in the beginning, like this all spun from the injury and then not being able to
Yes.
play a sport that you were very passionate about. I mean, you were devoting a career towards that. And then you had this situation. And then not only that, through that addiction recovery, you've discovered that tumor. So what was it like? So here you are, you've got all these things that are on your shoulders, and
Yeah.
you're trying to figure
Yeah.
out your next steps. What was that like? What was the healing and growing moments through the season?
Well, it was. I wish I can say, it happened all at once, but it was a challenge.
Yeah.
It happened to me when I was 27, and at that time, I didn't know if I could ever have children. I didn't know if I could, after all that treatment, I didn't know if I could ever functionally live a normal life because I was just so messed up from the side effects of the chemotherapy and radiation. And I turned inward for a lot of years. I hid from the world. I felt like I was abandoned. And with the baseball thing, it was more than just a sport and a career. It became my identity. And that
Mm-hmm.
was my biggest problem is I invested so much into it. And that's something I talk to athletes now about overemphasizing your athletic identity. Because once I lost it and I was told I could never get it back, I didn't know where to turn. And so, there's a few turning points in my life where, I had some spiritual experiences, and my therapy dog Lingo came into my life when I was in a dark time, and he really helped. He really saved my
Mm-hmm.
life. He got me out into the world again. And it was finally a creature that didn't care about anything else, but just loved me and wanted to be with me. And that's what I needed more than anything after having all those bad things happen to me over and over.
Yeah, wow. And I appreciate you going there and saying, you know what? I was so enmeshed in this idea of baseball being more than a career. It became my identity. And so when I lost that, I lost a sense of who I was, because we all do that. Especially, women, when we become mothers and
Sure.
wives, a lot of us make that an identity. So when we get ready to
Yeah.
empty nest and our kids are grown, it's a shock to us, because it's like, now what?
Yeah.
And I'm sure
Yeah.
you asked yourself that same
Absolutely.
question.
Well, it,
Yeah.
it became it became a source of my a sense of self-worth, right?
Yeah.
Something from the outside, and I think we all do that in a certain way. We overemphasize work or family or whatever it may be, and that becomes our source of how we feel about ourselves. And then when we lose it, when I lost it, I just didn't know who I was. And I think going through all that pain and suffering was really just a journey of self-discovery, right? Because I always avoided the hard things, right? When things got hard, I turned to, painkillers or whatever it may be. But how I
Mm.
really learn about myself is when I step up and actually show up, even if I fail, So yeah, I know yeah. So
So, Michael, you're talking about all this transition that's going on in your life, and in that, you're healing and you're growing from a lot of the things you're learning about yourself and reestablishing identity. So, when did you begin to sense that there was purpose on the other side of your pain?
yeah, that's a good question. I think there was a couple times. The first one was like I told you about my dog Lingo,
Mhm.
and he was in the army. And when I was able to officially adopt him, one of the things that I promised that I was continue his work as a service dog to help other people in the way that he helped me. And one of the things that always stuck with me about my brain tumor, it was super rare in adults, which made my recovery very challenging, but it's very
Mhm.
common in children. And the thought, I know the hell that I went through, but to think of an innocent child going through that really kind of broke my heart. And I think that was so that I decided to take Lingo to the children's hospital and visit the kids going through challenging times. That was the idea. Maybe I can bring them a little joy. And I started to see the difference it was making. And then that was the purpose, that maybe my story and things that I've gone through can help other people. And then the second time where it kind of molded all together is when I was about a year into my sobriety, and I was given the chance to speak to a group at a treatment center. And I thought it would be easy because I used to pitch in front of thousands of people. I was all confident when I went up there, and when I went to speak, and I kind of had a frog in my throat because it was in front of like 200 people, and I was like, "What's going on?" But after I spoke, even though I thought I didn't do well, some people came up to me and said how much of a difference my story was making, and they could
Mhm.
relate to it. And I just thought, hey, this is something that I can do. Maybe there's a chance where I can get paid to talk about myself for a living. And that was something that, but I can help other people. I think that was the most meaningful thing. And so that's where my purpose came from, and both those incidences. And I think now sharing my story, helping others is what I was meant to do, not baseball.
Wow. And it's funny because we go through, we try to take control of our lives sometimes, but then life happens, and we realize that we really don't have control over those things. But I appreciate the vulnerability that you're expressing here, because you're sharing how you're going through all of this stuff, and it's almost like it's peeling away a lot of the ego, because you mentioned being very confident in your baseball play, but then getting ready to speak, you're like, okay, this is a
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
different thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But in that, you're your most genuine self. Would you
Yes.
not agree?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not like I'm up there talking about the best things that happened to me. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
worst things that happened to me. I'm airing out my dirty laundry, and how powerful that was and how difficult it was in front of other
Mhm.
people to share that. It was just a moment where I was like, man, this is something that is healing. It was healing for me to do that. And every time I mean, I've spoken hundreds of times since, and every time I do it, I still feel that. And I feel that group conscious when I talk, and I can just feel the energy, and being authentic in front of other people is such a freeing feeling. And that's one thing I value most now is authenticity.
Yeah. And it's like the Bible says sometimes, the truth will set you free. And that's been my experience in my own journey. And just listening to others that have come on the podcast and their stories, much like yours, the truth does genuinely set you free because you no longer have to hide behind the things that were ailing you, really. I mean, you
Sure.
now can say, you know what? This did happen to me. I'm going to own it. I take the responsibilities. You mentioned in the beginning how you took the accountability for where you were at the in that moment, and then you
Yeah.
started making changes. So, how has this story shaped you, who you are today, the man that you are today?
Yeah, well, one thing I wanted to touch on was something you said about the truth, and I think that's great because it's fear, right? When we
Mm,
tell, I was always afraid when I told the truth or showed who I really was. You don't know what's going to happen, right? You don't know how the person's going to feel or how the person's going to react. When you lie, there's no risk, right? Because I know
mhm.
what's going to happen. Either you're going to believe me or you're not going to. But that truth, when we're ready to, when I was ready to go through that risk and really share who I am, I got back at what I couldn't imagined. So the story has shaped me. I think what it's done is it's taught me who I am. I'm a flawed human being. And more than that, it's made me feel comfortable in my own skin. Right. So I know I have all these character defects, and that's why I say all the things that I went through is a disease of me. Right. Drugs and alcohol were a symptom of my disease. My addiction started long before I had a drink or a drug, and once I'm able to recognize those patterns in my life, I'm able to move forward better from it. So I know I'm going to always have these character flaws, but I can continue to work on them, and that's part of it. It's acceptance, and I don't always have to approve of those things, right? But just learning to love myself, I think, and just I'm still learning about who I am. I'm trying all these new different things. I wasn't just a baseball player. I'm so much more than that.
Yes, absolutely. And, just hearing the passion behind your voice as you're expressing, the changes that you went through and the things that you're learning about yourself and really understanding you're much more than what you put on yourself. Like I can just feel the power of your story. It's so strong and it resonates with me and it's inspiring for sure. Um, let's say somebody's out there and they're like, wow, that's great for you, but here I am in my rock bottom moment. I'm in this state of mind where I don't know what my next step is. What kind of advice would you give that person?
Yeah, this is always a difficult question because I always feel like I'm the last person you want to turn to for advice. But at the same time, what I would say is help somebody else. Get
Mhm.
out of your headspace. Whatever it may be in. It's when I was, especially when I was in that mindset, everything was about me, how I feel, this and that. When I just help somebody else without any expectation and something in return, something happens, something changes, and most of all, it helps me. So what I would say is just whatever it may be, help your neighbor, go pick up garbage, whatever it is, even if you don't, it might be the hardest thing to do. If you're struggling,
Yeah.
just be out there and help somebody else and see what happens.
And I'm going, you mentioned that a couple of times in your answers as we're having this conversation. But I really feel like there's a message to be heard there for anybody that's listening. When we're able to practice on the things that we're growing in, that's how we refine the skill that we need in order to continue to walk in our purpose and our calling. So I love that you're saying get out there and help somebody. And it means just starting where you're at. You
Yeah,
know, I'm sure, Michael, you were at a place where, like, I don't, going back to that very first moment of speaking, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna get out there and do it.
yeah,
And the amount of feedback that you got, like, it's just taking that step.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and exactly with that. you know, I've learned so much from my failures. The good times were great. I had whatever, but the only things I really remember are the times that I failed or messed up. And so when I'm in that situation where I'm going to put myself out there, if I'm going to risk, if the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to learn something, then what do I have to lose? And that's the way that I look at it. And so I try to approach everything, every opportunity, everything in my life. Just hey, I don't know what's going to happen, but when I just show up and do the next right thing, good things tend to happen to me.
Yes, yes, and it really is for anybody that's definitely walking towards that purpose or whatever that mission is in their life. You continue. It's a continuum of learning and growing and seeing the feedback not necessarily as criticism, but more as, okay, this is how I get better. This is the next step to being the better version of myself. And it's not about perfection. We're not seeking perfection because you mentioned we're all human.
Yeah.
And that is an unrealistic goal, but it is about being powerful in the things you do, being intentional in the things you do, and just, man, just showing up and saying, you know what? I'm here with you. I'm going to walk with you. Let me tell you my story and just continue to share in that element. Wow, that's powerful. What does living with purpose look like for you now?
It's, it goes alongside of that. It's helping others. It's living amends. I did a lot of things in my past that I can't really apologize for because my words became meaningless. I apologize so many times, but I've been given the gift to be around my family and now and create this new relationship. So living with purpose is being in the moment, being as present as much as I can, to being there for my family, showing up, um, helping other people. That any chance that I can get, whether I'm at the gym, whether I'm out in public, whether wherever I'm speaking, wherever that
Mm.
is, as long as I'm present for the people around me, that's what purpose is. And I can maybe attraction rather than promotion. I can lead by my actions and my words, not necessarily or my actions and my presence, not necessarily my words.
Mm. I like that. And it also reminds me of the saying, actions speak louder than words. And so
Sure.
you are someone that's out there doing it and you're going to be remembered for that. Speaking of being remembered, I'm going to ask you a legacy and impact question. If today were your last day, what would you want to be remembered for?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's something I haven't thought too much about. I'd like to be remembered for somebody that was flawed, that saw the mistakes that he made and was willing to just show up and change and be there, and somebody that finds strength and vulnerability, and that was just willing to sacrifice all the things just to be a better person. I no, I don't expect for so long. That's a hard question for me because for so long it was always about feeling important, and baseball was my way to get famous and have all this attention, and what that did is that brought me down to a dark place of self-destruction. And so now it's almost like, especially when I'm with the speaking stuff, right, and I'm doing all this
Yeah.
stuff, and I got to do social media again or these podcasts and things. It's you can also have that fear of success, right, instead of not just failure. So it's that fear of if all these good things start to happen again, what will I do? And I just hope that I'm remembered as somebody who wasn't compromised on his values, that was authentic, and it was just who he was. He was just a good person.
Mm, wonderful. So, as we get close to wrapping up our conversation, Michael, I just want to ask you if you could leave one bit of truth or maybe a word of encouragement to someone out there that is still trying to figure out what their purpose is, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say just show up. That's the biggest thing that you can do. Is it's always worse. Whatever the situation is always worse than as the one we create in our head is always worse than the actual outcome is going to be. So no matter how hard it seems or how painful it's going to be, whatever the experience is, just show up and try your best. And let God take care of the rest. That's my biggest thing, because when I got into the most troubles in my life is when I avoided those things and I turned inward,
Mm,
right? Turn
mhm.
turn outward and just show up.
I love that. And you're not the only one that talks about showing up, engaging, finding a community. finding those that are going to uplift you just as much as you're uplifting the next person that may be in their, rock bottom moment. I love that. And it's such a powerful message, and it's easier said than done
Yes.
because there's time, like you mentioned, it's so easy, especially for those that label themselves introverted. Like it's so easy to turn internally and go, you know what? My life's over. This is it. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm just going to lay here in the the puddle
Yeah.
of it all. But get up on your feet and go out and find the connection that you need that's going to help spin the motivation. It's hard, it is. And
Yeah, and that can look like a lot of different things. That doesn't mean, hey, you just got to go up, show up in person and confront whatever it is. You
amen.
can find a person to help you, or just whatever. Find a way to find a solution by just by doing something, taking action. Right. That's what showing up is, taking action. Right. Because when we just try to let things happen, that's when, or hope things happen. That's when we fall back into ourselves. So that's, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Michael, that concludes all of the questions that I had for you, and I appreciate all of the insight that you've given and just sharing bits of your story. If someone wanted to get in touch with you or maybe contact you for a speaking engagement,
Yeah.
how can they do so?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's michaelbugary.com, MICHAELBUGARY.com. I'm also on Facebook, Michael Bugary, and LinkedIn, and my Instagram is at mbugary, my first initial and my last name. Please, if speaking engagement or any questions, whatever it may be, I just love to interact and talk about these things, and hopefully we can help each other.
Wonderful. Well, Michael, I want to thank you for sharing your heart, your story, and your light with us today. It's conversations like this that remind us that purpose isn't about perfection, it's about showing up and growing through the things that we go through and trusting that every step matters. Here at the Good Morning Minute and through the Empower Her Steps virtual conference, we believe every woman has a calling worth discovering and a voice worth using. So, friend, wherever you are today, remember your purpose is powerful and you're not walking alone. So, until next time, keep rising, keep trusting, and keep walking boldly into the life God has designed for you. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much peace, much love, and many blessings.